Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians, as a result of very heavy clashes, managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Konstantinovka. I'll remind you that a few days ago we got the first video. On the 25th of August we got the video how the Russian soldiers answered the farms from the southern part of Konstantinovka, and how the Russian soldiers, when they answered the farms, raised the flag in this area. And based on this video we have adjusted the southern part of the village. Just a day later, on the 27th of August, we got another video how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in the central part of Konstantinovka, and after very heavy artillery preparation, after the clearing of the village of this part with FPV drone, we can see another group of Russian soldiers who raised the flag in this point. So based on this video we have added additional territory under complete Russian control. But this morning we got very interesting videos. First, let's take a look at this one. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were running away from Konstantinovka and the Russians were hunting and attacking them with FPV drones. So basically these are the last Ukrainian soldiers who left Konstantinovka and who withdrew their positions completely. And later we got additional video from Russian sources, and in this video we can see the Russian drone that was flying from the eastern part of Konstantinovka to the western part. Now we can see the Russian soldiers who were bringing the Russian flag, and they raised the Russian flag right in the most western part of the village. Based on this video we have adjusted the map. Based on this video, most likely every single mapper will adjust the map in Konstantinovka area, of course in Russian favor. We can't say for sure whether the Russians captured the entire Konstantinovka or not. Maybe there are still very heavy clashes in the village, not in the village but in the garden association Shakhtar. Most likely there are still Ukrainian soldiers in this area, but I believe that most likely these Ukrainian soldiers, under the pressure of Russian soldiers, would be forced to fall back towards the village of Antonovka. Obviously this is a significant victory for the Russian forces. I'm not sure what the Russians are going to do next. Maybe they're going to move further in Katerinovka, Antonovka, or maybe the Russians will concentrate their power, their force, to establish complete control over Vuhledar. As for Vuhledar, today we got additional reports from pro-Russian sources, and not from pro-Russian but from pro-Ukrainian sources, Deep State. They stated that this morning the Russians began full-scale offensive operations towards Vuhledar. The Russians are attacking right now the Ukrainian positions using the roads to the west of Pavlovka, and the second road of attack goes through the stronghold that located on the intersections of roads. So most likely during the next few days there are going to be very heavy clashes for the stronghold of Vuhledar, and most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back. Furthermore, according to information we have, according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions along TO424 road, and they captured additional tree lines and additional fortifications. Now the main battle for the area has begun. The Russians need to establish complete control over the city of Vuhledar, and if they are able to do this, then the situation for the Ukrainians is going to be very, very difficult. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction, where we also got significant number of details and updates, and let's start from the southern part. Just yesterday the pro-Ukrainian mappers reported that the Russians answered the village of Memryk but without any geolocations, and as for the 28th of August the pro-Ukrainian mappers reported that the Russians captured the village of Memryk completely. Furthermore, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the stronghold that located to the south of the village, which is obviously significant progress of the armed force of Russian Federation. And due to the water reservoirs and rivers that goes from the Karlovka water reservoir to Kurakhova, we can make a conclusion that currently the Ukrainians who are located in the village of Galisinovka and Karlovka appeared in Cauldron. Now let's talk about the geolocations. This morning the Russian sources published the video how they raised the flag in the central part of the village of Memryk. We haven't colored the entire village under complete Russian control. Let's wait for a little bit, and I believe that today or during the next let's say Minister of Defense report we're going to receive 100% proofs that the village was captured. For now let's wait a little bit, but we have no doubts that the village was captured completely. We're just following some rules. Now let's talk about Selydove, and the situation in Selydove is getting worse and worse for the Ukrainians. We don't have any geolocations, we don't have any flags. The only thing we have is some reports from pro-Russian sources. And according to pro-Russian sources, the Russians began full-scale offensive operations towards Selydove, and as a result of clashes, they have already established complete control over the village of Mikhailovka, and the Russians reached the eastern outskirts of the city of Selydove. Furthermore, there was a very interesting report from pro-Russian sources that the Russian armed forces have completely cleared Mira Street in the city of Selydove in the Pokrovsky direction. And this is the Mira Street. And if this report is correct, if this report is really correct, that means that the Russians captured the coal mine, and the most important, the Russians captured the landfill, the Terikon of Korotchenka. And telling the truth, who controls the Terikon, who controls the landfill, controls the entire Selydove. The Ukrainians will not be able to hold even a day their positions inside of Selydove if the Russians control the landfill. The Russians captured the city of Novohrodivka for 4 days, but if the Russians captured the landfill, the Ukrainians would lose Selydove probably within a half of 1 day, not even within 2 or 3 days. It's gonna be a real disaster for the Ukrainians. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Novohrodivka. We have additional coordinates to the video that we have already discussed yesterday. We have adjusted the map based on the additional geolocations. As you can see, we have this is the picture. The Russians blocked the Ukrainians in Novohrodivka from the north, and the Russians blocked the Ukrainians from the south. And then they began clearing the situation, moving from top to the bottom, and from bottom in the top direction. So this is the situation in this area, and today the pro-Ukrainian mappers confirmed that Novohrodivka fell, that the Russians established complete control. There are just few blocks left. We're talking about the area in the vicinity of the railway station and the area between the two landfills. But according to pro-Russian sources, the landfill, at least the eastern landfill, was captured by the Russians as well. So the situation is critical. Novohrodivka has fallen, most likely. The Russians managed to release additional number of forces, and now the question where exactly the Russians are planning to use the group of forces Novohrodivka in the next battles. Maybe they will continue moving further in the western direction, or maybe they will try to increase to reinforce the Russian offensive operation towards Selydove from the northwestern, let's say, direction. Let's moving in the southwestern part of Novohrodivka. Now let's talk about the Hrodivka, another city in this direction. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly in this area. The Ukrainians, according to pro-Russian sources, abandoned their positions in the village of Hrodivka and withdraw their positions towards the city of Mirnograd. So now there are no more cities or villages on this side of water reservoirs that located between the villages of Hrodivka and Novohrodivka, and obviously this is significant progress of the armed forces of Russian Federation. Furthermore, we have additional geolocations that confirm the contested area in Russian favor. In this video, we can see how the Ukrainian forces of 71st Jaeger Brigade were bombing and attacking the Russian forces along the road between Novohrodivka and Hrodivka. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. So this territory was called. We still haven't received any updates regarding the city of Krutoy Yar, Krasny Yar, and Mykolaievka, but I'll remind you that according to pro-Russian sources, all these villages were captured by the Russians. So let's wait for additional geolocations or details, and if we got some, we will of course adjust the map in Russian favor. Now let's move further. The Russians continue their offensive operation. We see that Ukrainians can't stop the Russians, and the Ukrainians are planning today to hold a meeting, NATO meeting. Let's say NATO-Ukraine Council to meet on Wednesday at Kiev's request. An emergency Ukraine-NATO meeting will be held tomorrow at Kiev's request. This piece of news was posted yesterday on the 27th of August. And most likely the Ukrainians, Zelensky, are going to discuss with the NATO countries very difficult situation in the Pokrovsk direction, and that they need urgent help. If NATO countries if NATO countries don't help Ukraine, there are very high chances that the entire front line will collapse, and the Russians will be able to get Dnipro River very fast, much faster than anybody thinks. Now let's move further. We have additional geolocations almost everywhere. Just regular activity. The Russians Russians are destroying and bombing Ukrainian logistic in the Sumy area. In this video, we can see that the Russians destroyed another bridge between Kharkiv and Sumy that Ukrainians were using to redeploy forces with the logistic purposes and so on. As for the Kursk area, we haven't received anything special, just the regular clashes. The Russians continue reinforcing their positions inside of Glushkova area. They're building more and more pontoon bridges, and more of pontoon bridges were discovered and spotted by the Ukrainians. So obviously the Ukrainians lost their time, lost their momentum. Now they will never be able to capture Glushkova area due to significant number of pontoon bridges and strong support of this area by the Russian forces. Of course, the Ukrainians will try, but obviously this might be a suicide operation. On the other hand, we start receiving updates from the city of Hrodivka, which is located very far from the line of combat contact, and the source reported that Ukrainians established FPV drone control over the bridge in this area, and that Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the civilian cars that were moving from the city, let's say between the cities, which is obviously very interesting, because the city is very far from the line of combat contact, and the Ukrainians have possibilities to get there with FPV drones. Maybe it's the work of sabotage and reconnaissance drones, who knows. Furthermore, as a result of clashes, the forces of 82nd Brigade of Armored Forces of Ukraine were completely defeated on the Kursk direction, and the Russians managed to establish complete control over their positions and to capture the banner of one of the battalions of 82nd Brigade, which is obviously a part of humiliation. So let's wait. Anyway, the front line stopped changing in this area. There are still very heavy clashes, but mainly the clashes are going along the line of combat contact. Despite the complete stabilization of the front line, the Ukrainians continue sending forces in this area. Furthermore, the source reported that Ukrainians continue preparing additional brigades. As for now, we have significant number of different brigades. We have 159s, we have 155s, 156s, and 157s, and 158 infantry brigades. The Ukrainians stopped building the mechanized brigade. They're just building infantry, light infantry brigade, because due to the problems with supply and support, I believe. So anyway, we have more and more evidence, more and more updates that nobody is going to stop the special military operation and war in 2024 and 2025, and most likely the clashes will continue the next year as well. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.